Long days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I am known on this level of the tower as Jaime and Fuego, and if it please you, join me here for a little bit of palaver on Hail to Stephen King, my favorite author, as you can see by this ginormous bookcase of craziness that is seated right beside me. Sai King, he is indeed my favorite author, and getting to go through this newest book of his was a true pleasure. Welcome to the horror show. Once again, you can just call me Fuego, and yeah, this is a show that I do twice a week, but it looks like that might be changing with our new Patreon that we just launched this past week. But yeah, as I creep towards episode 100 of this program, I don't think anything is at least going to change until then. So The Outsider, y'all. This review is coming a little bit later than I would have initially intended, for the sheer fact that we had Phoenix Comic Fest, or Fan Fusion, whatever the hell they're calling it now. That took a lot of our time because I prepared for 3 different panels for that particular convention. We only got to do 2, unfortunately, and had to film the Pet Cemetery panel a little bit later, which is already up on the horror show here right now, but look forward to the Stand anniversary for its 40 year, and also a lengthy discussion that we did about it, where we just looked back at the novel, the original miniseries, the feature film's first half, and then chapter 2, which is coming next year. But I just finally, after getting done with all that convention shizzle, got done reading The Outsider, and honestly, y'all, I gotta say, this was the first time since probably Revival where I just loved a Stephen King book. Yeah, seriously, I really liked Finders Keepers. I must say, I wasn't too big on End of Watch. I did not feel like that was the most awesome ending to the Hodges trilogy, where King decided to get supernatural with Brady at the end and whatnot. And I didn't really like Sleeping Beauties that much. It was ambitious, and I will give it that. And it had some interesting bits here and there, but it was lengthy, it was plotting, and I really, with the exception of a couple characters, just didn't care very much. But this story you definitely care significantly about, and so I'm, for the first time ever on here on Hail to Stephen King, I'm gonna actually do spoilers at the end, because this is one of those books very similar to a film that we saw at the press screening last week called Hereditary. It's where you can hint at things and dance around storylines, but there is a big twist reveal kind of thing that happens not too far into the storytelling that, if I was to spoil, it's going to change the dynamic of everything, essentially. And regrettably, some of these spoilers were hinted at in a few synopses that you can find floating around on the internet. Some of them professional and official too. So that's kind of a bummer, because I feel like when you read the little leaflet that's in the hardcover, it doesn't really give any of those inclinations. It doesn't give you hints, really. It leaves it vague enough, and that's what I'm going to do my damnedest to do. But I am going to spoil here at the end, because you just have to. Bottom line, I love this book. I thought it was awesome. It's such a tough issue to dance around, so I guess I'll just give my 2 cents about the story as best I can. So essentially, you have a nasty, grisly murder that goes down. It's like a 12-year-old kid. He is found not just molested, but mutilated, and there's a chunk of his throat missing, and there's all kinds of physical evidence. We're talking spoogies and all kinds of nasty stuff. So this was a grotesque, just murder, rape kind of thing, and on a child no less. I don't really think murder hits anywhere near as hard as when there is a child involved, and especially when there's this sort of just horrible defiling going down. It really bothers me, genuinely, as it should everybody. And so yeah, this kid is found, and there's DNA evidence that immediately links him to one of the most respected people in this community, in small town Oklahoma, kind of suburb status. And so he is immediately taken into custody, and not just taken into custody, but in a ceremoniously public shaming fashion. Like, he's out there coaching the little league team, this baseball team, and he's also a well-respected local teacher. Everybody in the community knows him. He's like kind of like a little local celebrity of sorts, and they arrest him in front of over 1,000 people. Yeah, it's really shaming, and it's meant to send a message. And the reason that Ralph, who is our main character in this story, goes about doing it in such a just nastily shaming fashion is because he has a personal connection to this guy. Not only are him and his wife Jeannie friends with this person who all of the evidence is pointing towards, but their son Derek was also coached by him at one point in time as well. So to just even fathom the idea that this guy, but they all said, Ted Bundy and, Dahmer were like the just nicest guys, and you never would have thought. John Wayne Gacy also, he's going as a clown entertaining kids in the hospitals and stuff like that, terminally ill kids. And so you never would think that, that Terry would be capable of something so sadistic and hideously, nauseatingly horrendous, and yet all the evidence is pointing to this being the case. I mean, there is physical evidence, there's fingerprints, there's bodily fluids, horrible stuff. And so the only interesting thing that really just flips this case on its head very quickly is the fact that at the very same time that eyewitnesses saw him with this kid, that there's all this physical evidence, he's in another state. He's with a bunch of teachers at a convention listening to a mystery author, talk about, his books and his craft and his approach and stuff like that. So not only that, there's video evidence, showing that he was physically there. And as they start to amass more information, there's prints, there's all this stuff. So how can one person be in two places at once? That is the big intriguing thing that drives this story forward, this very just unsettling, crime. And then in turn, without spoiling too much, there's another crime in Ohio that like shows, I guess, kind of a similar just bit of nastiness. And so they start to immediately wonder, is there a correlation here? What is going on? And once again, without spoiling things, I think I can dance around this issue well enough for y'all who haven't read the story yet by saying they really juggle the element of mystery very, very well here. And you can tell right away that, despite writing Sleeping Beauties with his son, that Stevie K, after doing the Bill Hodges trilogy, can't get this sort of detective work out of his system. He's still drawn to it. He's still into it. And even if you go to something like Joyland, for instance, which celebrates its 5-year anniversary this year. Shout out to my homegirl and friend Ms. Bond, who loves that story. It's interesting how King just, even if you go to what the Haven series was based on, the Colorado Kid, I believe it's called. King, as he gets older, you can tell he really likes this noir, procedural, kind of detective work. And, King even wrote a Sherlock Holmes story, which is collected in Nightmares and Dreamscapes, if I'm not mistaken. So, he has always enjoyed this sort of storytelling, but he does a fantastic job here of just approaching it and making it seem, is there a supernatural element or is there not a supernatural element? Is this person being set up? Are there multiple, killers or whatever involved? And, that's where I just have to unfortunately leave it, because without spoiling things, I can't really say too much more than that. The one thing that I will say, though, it's in the synopsis on Wikipedia, and it was hinted at in some other things. This is kind of a Bill Hodges spin-off. Best way that I can describe it without spoiling or divulging any big details. But Ralph, the main character in this, the investigator, just the relationship between him and his wife, his essence of skepticism, the team that he assembles, and it's like, you had the little trifecta with Jerome and with Holly and Bill going on in that trilogy, which was really cool. But this is like, there's a full-on like band of peeps who get together. There's a lawyer, there is an investigator taps another investigator. There's the dynamic of the public, I guess, prosecutor of sorts, this guy William, with the cowlick and whatnot going down, who was also a dynamic of dissension and whatnot that Ralph has to constantly deal with, Ralph being this like chief detective of sorts. And I mean, when the investigation really goes into full furious swing, it's a really cool cast of characters. And then there's this Hispanic dude whose name is eluding me, who gives some very interesting insight into an old legend, which they're kind of wondering, could this have some sort of bearing into the storytelling and whatnot? But yeah, it's masterfully written. It's a little less than 600 pages. I want to say it's like 560, something like that. But it was a fascinating King read that goes places I wasn't initially expecting. And I guess at this point, guys, I can't hold back my spoilerness. So, if you do not want to hear any spoilers about this story that I'm about to go into, yeah, just, stop here and then come back for the full opinion of my own once you have finished reading The Outsider. But bottom line, The Outsider it's awesome. It's one of it's definitely in the top King work of this decade, I guess you could say, and I definitely recommend everybody going and checking it out. So, yes, we are going into it. We are going to talk about the fact that Holly from the Hodges trilogy shows up in this and is a pivotal character. And I have to say, having divided my attention between the audiobook and the regular reading, as I often do, it was so great to hear Will Patton, the guy who read the 3 previous Bill Hodges books. He had to read this because the way he speaks and enunciates as, Holly's character, it's the way I envision her speech pattern, I guess, in my head. And so if any of you have done the Hodges trilogy audiobook-wise, and that's why I told my co-host Marsha Parker, I was like, Marsha, you have to get The Outsider. And she was like, why? And I'm like, well, it's kind of a Hodges spinoff. And obviously it is. This takes place after Bill has passed away, and Holly gives insight into some other adventures she had with Bill, and she ends up having a very similar dynamic with Ralph that she did with Bill. And, the only difference, I guess, there being the fact that Ralph needs convincing. Ralph is the eternal skeptic, even when the evidence is just building up and building up and building up and building up. And they're like, okay, there's 2 separate people who, were in 2 places at once when they were pegged for different murders. I mean, when you hear about the guy who worked at the elderly home, and, how he is pegged with the same, crime of killing these 2 young girls that are found raped and mutilated in this horrendous fashion. The story, for me, I actually really liked it when it was just, could this person be in 2 places at once? But it does take the King touch of awesomeness once it revs in with the supernatural aspect. And the El Cuco, I believe it is. I actually went and did some research about this after finishing reading the book earlier today, and this is a real legitimate legend that was in Spain and Portugal and was carried over into Latin America and South America when the conquistadors were over there. And just as somebody was telling me at work the other day, a Mexican buddy of mine, he was like, yeah, Spain basically, you can talk about the length of the Roman Empire or the Greek rule or things like that, but as far as like controlling the most of the world at one particular time, it was definitely España, it was Spain. And so you can see why this just folk tale that was supposed to just creep kids out, why it has stood the test of time, and it's been involved in so much contemporary creativity. It's seriously crazy to me. As I was just going through the Wikipedia, there is a laundry list of just different writers and singers and creatives, like John Five from originally from Manson's band, and I was with Rob Zombie's band, and he also does solo stuff like Careful with That Axe Eugene or whatever, which was stolen from the Pink Floyd album. John Five had a song referencing this particular story, and so it's fascinating the way King crafted and kind of concocted all of this together. I was so at home and so happy to see Holly's character come back. You know, there's Hodges references, there's a Jerome reference here or there, but for me, at the end of the day, she was neck and neck as far as memorability with Hodges, and she does such a splendid job in this, and she nuts up in the finale of this. Like, she's the one who vanquishes this evil presence, this outsider, this El Cuco, you know, whatever you want to call it, and it's a really cool climax, I have to say. If I'm going to be critical of a few things here, and this is where I couldn't mention any of this unless I was in spoiler territory, you can definitely see similarities to other King work, which regrettably he is notorious for, you know. As much as I love El Rey, and as much as I really, really enjoy the hell out of this book, there is, like, the best way I could describe this is you take it and you take the Mercedes trilogy, you know, the Hodges stuff, and you mush it together. Because it's got the procedural, you know, just criminal, detective aspect to it, but then they go into the supernatural area, especially with the fact that this outsider preys on children, you know, and not only that, but also just gains energy from the fear, you know. Who else are we talking about? Yeah, we're talking Pennywise here, guys. We're talking, you know, just even when the outsider, El Cuco, is being vanquished, you know, in the cave at the end, you know, he's like, have you met others like me? And we're like, well, yeah, we have. You know, we had Dandelo, we had Bob Gray's, Pennywise, whatever the hell you want to call him. And so, you know, there are similar creatures that we have encountered in King books that prey on fear, but yet it's, I guess it makes sense, you know, because this is all the King verse and Cause a Wheel, and, you know, we know that there are other just beings and entities, you know, like Gray, Pennywise, you know, whatever you want to call her, you know, that, yeah, have popped up in various incarnations of King's work. But, you know, some more of the tropes that I have to jump on, we saw it in Insomnia, we saw it in It, and those are the two that I'm really going to go after, seeing a lot of similarities here, especially after all the success that It saw at the box office. You know, how many times have we seen going into a lair to vanquish something? We saw it in Insomnia, we saw it in It, and we see it in this. How many times have we also seen, you know, whether it was, you know, whether it was flying the plane, you know, into the convention center, just this person in Insomnia, you know, this guy being kind of controlled. We see it with Bowers in It, you know, being controlled to, you know, go and extract the work. You see it with Jack in this, you know, where, you know, he thinks he's got the skin cancer thing going on, and so he is manipulated by the outsider to go and basically, you know, Remington, you know, a couple different guys, and he injures the Hispanic homie who I loved so much in this, and, you know, and kills two others. And so, yeah, that's where, you know, those are the few things that, while I took exception with the beats being so similar, I mean, shit, even in my beloved Doomakey, you know, you're going to the lair of this creature, thing, presence, entity, whatever. And, but, you know, those gripes aside, I really, really like the characters, and I love the fusion of the detective story with, like, you know, where End of Watch didn't work for me with fusing those themes together. This actually really worked for me here, you know, especially, like, I love the Holly character, and I hope that King is not gonna shelve her to the side. I would not be surprised, you know, especially with all the different references that Ralph brought up when he was mentioning having looked into, you know, just her backstory and some of the cases that she solved with Hodges. There's more stories to tell there, and you can tell if King is going to bring her back that he really enjoyed playing in that particular universe and stuff like that. But aside from that, y'all, I guess that is the end of my spoiler thoughts and stuff. Boy, the stuff with the children, I mean, and even like the transformation process for this creature, you know, for this outsider, El Cuco. The stuff where they, you know, talk about, you know, like the black tar goo with the transformation and the stuff in the barn. I mean, there are some very fascinating, cool beats, and I love the stuff with the luchadores and, you know, talking about the old films and stuff like that. I mean, I'm a gringo that goes by the moniker of Jaime and Fuego for a reason. I love the Spanish culture. I truly, truly do. And growing up here in Arizona, which was formerly Mexico, centuries before, as all of you know, this was a cool fusion of a lot of different King ideas. And while I can point out to some tropes and some beats that we've seen before, he really fused it into something that I found compelling, fascinating, and I guess we're all awaiting the adaptation, because at this fever rate that everything King is being snatched up, you better believe that this is going to be turned into something. And I heard that, before Sleeping Beauties even came out, they were saying, oh, the rights have already been sold, it's going to be a TV series. I want this so much more, so much more. Hell, they could even factor this into later seasons of Mr. Mercedes or something. But in any event, y'all, I have to extend a grande gracias to all of you constant viewers, readers alike, who have tuned into this particular program. I have been Jaime and Fuego. You can find me on all social media sectors: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. I just like you see it spelled below, and I have so much fun content that is going to be coming through the pipeline as I charge towards episode 100. Mind-blowing to think that I have done nearly 100 episodes covering Stephen King, and that doesn't even include some of the panel stuff that we've done, some of the, just coverage where it wasn't hail with just me here. A lot of the It coverage, whether it was trailer reactions or, same with the Dark Tower movie, doesn't even, I'm probably at 100 or more at this particular rate. So if you have not subscribed to The Horror Show, please do. Porfa y gracias. Yes, make sure to ring the bell so you get all of the different notifications whenever I'm doing a new Hail to Stephen King video or anything else on here. We have our Hereditary review that just came up. That movie is tremendous. Awesome slow burn. Love me some A24, guys. Yes, so make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Anything on here is greatly appreciated, and if you do for this particular program, make sure to utilize the #Tizzle Hail to Stephen King. So until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, I must say hasta luego, sin amigos, constant readers and viewers alike once more. I hope that we get to see each other sooner rather than later, and until that moment transpires, remember, stay scared and read Stephen King's The Outsider, because it is damn good.